Hi, everyone. Welcome to Part 1, Chapter 1. The introduction notes to this chapter sums up what it is about. On a different note, I'm becoming more self-aware of who I am as I reread my story. I was always drawn towards home since an early age and enjoy my connection as a realtor. As in the video introduction notes, I have connected you to my song choice called The House That Built Me by Miranda Lambert. I hope you have enjoyed it. Now, let me continue with my story. The home on Concessionate was a major turning point in my life. It is the last memories I have of my dad when he was alive. It was the beginning of a shared life with my ex-husband. It was the first purchase of a home. It was where we raised our family, and it was where family life was very hectic. It was a good place filled with memories. It was also the beginning of then unexplained events, some of which today can be explained. When my dad passed away in December of 1988, he was in the process of building the home on Concessionate. To him, it was the opportunity to build his second home, live in it for a few years, and then sell it to make a profit for their retirement. I helped my dad whenever possible to build the home on Concessionate. When he passed away, the house was a closed shell with the electrical not completed. My dad was an electrician. He was It was actually Mom who followed through with the completion of the home. Coming from a small town, many people came out to help. Three people in particular stood out to help. One was my dad's brother Menzie, another was Merv, who was a builder and lived across the road. Harry's dad, good friend, was also there from the start of construction. With their major help, the project was completed. There were many times I went to this house alone and cried after he died and before the construction was completed. We moved into the house in the fall of 1989. My then ex-husband and I purchased the house from Mom in 1990. My mom lived with us. She was still working at the time and was independent, looking after her own needs, and didn't interfere with our lives. There were many times when I was grateful for her being around to help out with the two kids. My ex was not dependable for time as he was committed to his career and very busy. It was in this home that I recall happenings, but only after the next home in Pakenham did I relate back to some of those occurrences. Some were obvious occurrences, but spread out over time so that I did not consider it ongoing, just another weird thing happening. One of the most predominant was before my dad passed away. It was in the fall, and he was building the home. I was on I was on my way out to visit him, and my daughter, who was 3 at the time, was with me. I was driving on Wolf Grove Road and just coming over the incline before Old Kirk Cemetery when I came face to face with a car in my lane. He quickly veered to the road on my car's passenger side. I was shaken by the whole scenario and had thoughts of what the potential outcome might have been. When I arrived at the house, my dad and Harry were in the shop. The so-called shop was a portable schoolhouse located at the back side of the lot, which was being used as the meeting place for construction. I was a bit shaken as I was telling them what had just happened. Then I looked at the sunroom of the new home through the picture window of the shop and blurted out the words, "Dad, I don't see you living in this home." To which there was a silence, and then Harry said, "Sure you do." I then backtracked and said, "You're right, Harry. He will be enjoying this home very much when the project is completed." After saying this, I recalled another incident when again something I said came blurring out of my mouth unexpectedly, and it resulted in an accident happening at that very moment. Very creepy, especially when I felt it was not in my control. It was when I was dating my future first, my past first husband. I said I feel our hearts beating faster, which at that moment the axle fell off the car. It was because of the construction happening on this road, which the road had the pavement removed and was soft earth, giving the axle a place to dig into that saved us from a terrible outcome. Mike said to me in fear, "Don't ever say that again," which I was totally dumbfounded of where these words came from. After the occurrence at the shop, I remembered meeting my dad coming out of the bank as I was heading in. I could not look him in the eye. I kept my head down and said hi, but I avoided looking at him in the eye. It bothered me at that time, but I did not understand it. The last memories of Dad alive were that of the family party at Harry's sister. It was for the kids, and Santa Claus was going to be there. There were 4 of us that went: Mom, Dad, and my 3-year-old daughter, and myself. When we were leaving the house party, it had been snowing for a couple of hours, and my dad asked if I would drive. It was a strange request coming from him, but no problem for me. The next day was Sunday, and I called Mom to see how everything was. She said Dad was not feeling well and that he was getting the flu. On Monday evening, my daughter and I went to visit Mom and Dad. Dad had gone to work on Monday, but went to bed when he got home. My daughter went to Dad's bed to see how he was. He said he was not feeling good. It was early in the morning of Tuesday, December 21st, that I received a call from Mom to say they called the ambulance and are taking him to the hospital. She said it did not look good. I wanted to be there, not knowing he had already passed away. When I got to the hospital, Dad's brother and my brother were already there. I still did not know he was passed away. When the doctor came out, he asked about anything unusual because he said his body was very hot. This is when I asked how he was and was told without empathy he was dead. The autopsy revealed he had a heart attack, which was the result of a massive blood clot from the lung that moved and blocked the heart. Probably caused by a fall, which, yes, he had fallen from the ladder while building the house. There was much sadness to this time. He was well liked and respected by many. He also had 37 years working with Sears. On the night after the funeral, I had an encounter with my dad. I was sleeping in one of the twin beds in the home on Malcolm Street. I was fast asleep, and out of the blue, I was awakened by a presence. I became totally alert, and there was a distinct odor of sawdust. I was lying on my right side, and without opening my eyes, knew that this presence was my dad. I did not open my eyes. It was like I didn't want the presence to know I knew it was there. I could feel him beside me sitting on the bed. He moved his hand onto my shoulder and said to me, "Sorry, look after your mom." I will never, ever forget this experience or what was said because he had no idea I knew he was there or that I heard what he said. It was that distinct odor of sawdust that I related to later and knew it was my dad. There was no doubt in my mind. I did not question what I felt or heard. It was there, and that is what he said. I had gone to a fortune teller named Connie in the beginning of the fall. I went to her once before and found she gave accurate readings. I since know that the timing for her predictions can be years out, but they do occur. At this time, she said to me, "You're trying to sell a home that is not selling." I said yes. She then gave me the number 85, which is the street number of the house. She said, "You don't understand why it will sell." I agreed. The house was a bungalow in a good location with a good price. Then she said, there is a reason why it will not sell, and you will know soon. I would never have imagined the reason. If the house would have sold, there would have been no place to go. Financially, it was very difficult for my mom because everything was tied up in the new house. There was a bridge mortgage, but no insurance for Dad. Mom had a large, unfinished, over-budget project, an existing home with a large mortgage, and one less income. Today, I believe that a house will not sell or let you go until the timing is right. This later becomes more evident. After we moved on concession 8, I had a few more occurrences. I don't know for sure the sequences of events, but one was definitely my father calling my name. He kept saying, Heather, 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 until I came out of my deep sleep and heard his calls, to which I responded as I woke saying, what? There was also the time pretty much the same situation, only it was a doorbell ringing. Coming out of my deep sleep, hearing the sound of a doorbell. It was ringing, ringing, ringing as I woke. I actually pulled the covers out of my way and jumped out of the bed in a panic, heading to answer the front door. It was so real. Both the doorbell and my dad's voice were loud and persistent. Then there was a few times I would wake to the smell of sawdust and knew my dad was present. It was actually a comfort feeling. The last time I smelt the odor of sawdust was when I was around 3 months pregnant with my son. I was catching many different odors and feeling a presence of someone in the room close to my bed. At this time, I could easily make out 3 distinct odors. One was sawdust, which I associated with my dad, and then the other 2. There was the smell of a pipe, and the other was an old musty sweater smell. Both reminded me of an old man. The pipe I could relate to my great uncle Jimmy. He used to smoke a pipe, so I knew the smell well. There was also a chair ottoman in my bedroom that he used to sit on. I never thought about this connection, but as I write, I can. The smells were around a lot at the beginning of my pregnancy and then suddenly disappeared. I actually have not felt the presence of my dad from this time on. That did change. There was other happenings that I had just brushed aside, but now I know the connection and put more importance on them. Sleeping in and wakening by what I felt like someone lifting my arm up gently and then moving it up and down a few times in quick motions. My arm would be stretched out, hanging over the bed. I would awake and think to myself, that was weird, and forgot about it. The really weird part about it is that I know my arm physically did not move. It was the sensation of this happening. This had happened in the past and also happened while I was at the ski hill. So I now know this was my sister trying to wake me up. It was also in the morning light when I didn't usually have visitations. My first visual occurrence of my sister was here at concession 8. It was during the night when I woke from my sleep. It was like I was forcing myself to wake up from a deep sleep. When I looked, I saw an image of a young girl by the door. Even though she was a haze of gray, I could make out her form and that she had her hand bent and lifted up against the wall and leaning her head into it, like those dolls called crybabies I've seen in the past. She was taller than the light switch to the wall on the door. The door was closed. Funny thing is that I usually have the door open as it is a habit of mine and also so I can hear the kids more easily during the night. The next morning I told my mom and my husband at the time this story I just mentioned saying, I think it was Sandy. We also had an orange cat. His name was Kitty. How original. He was a little kitten which was very scared when the neighbor found him along the roadside. We ended up taking in the kitten. I had and still do have a very soft spot for orange cats. We grew up with an orange cat and it was awesome. Kitty received his name after we had taken it to the vet to have it neutered. They asked his name, to which there was no name, but whenever we called him, it was always, "Here, kitty, kitty." So the name stuck. This cat was the best cat. It was very independent and only sought attention when it wanted it. It was also very protective. I recall seeing a fox heading towards the sunroom. I went to get the cat and to show him the fox from the window. When the fox caught his attention, he was on high alert and growled at his presence. I also noted that Kitty had a distinct walk from behind. He looked like a model cat going down the runway. He sorry. He looked like a model cat going down the runway the way he walked. But he was also a male, so it always brought me humor seeing him walking away. There was also another time when my mom and I were at the bottom of the stairs having a conversation about the picture that hung in the hallway. It was a picture of her mom. Well, it was a picture of her mom, whom was 5 at the time, and the other women with and the other women were her mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. 4 generations in this one picture. Mom's mom, Annie, gave birth to her at the age of 46. It was one of those unscheduled pregnancies. As we were discussing the picture and Mom was telling stories from the past, we both stopped to look at the cat who was sitting on the floor by the stairs in front of us. The cat was looking at something and its head and was moving his head up and down and around as it watched this something moving all over the place. We both looked at each other thinking the same thing. We both had experienced something similar in the past at the home I grew up in. I had come over for a visit and was behind the fireplace leading to the garage door, having a conversation, and ended up talking about her mother. As we were talking, something in the living room broke on the floor. I went over to find a small teacup and saucer that had fallen off the shelf, and the teacup broke into 2 pieces. It was given to me by my Uncle Bud, who had given it to his mother as a gift. I had left it out as a family thing to remember. The funny thing was that there were 2 of them sitting on the flat shelf, and one of them just fell off. Absolutely no explanation or reason as to how it could fall off. We both looked at each other thinking the same thing. I think her mom had to do with both occurrences. It was these occurrences that were kept in the back of my mind. They happened, but I only ever thought of them as just a strange happening. It was not a steady stream of occurrences, just weird things. As time progressed and I moved to the ski hill, it became quite apparent that this was not going away and it was becoming a common activity. Today I see this concessionate as being the beginning of opening my eyes to the reality of what was to come. After my marriage dissolved with my ex-husband, it was a very difficult time. The time was April of 2005. I was left with a large house to manage, a 12-year-old child to look after, and a career to sustain. In August, at the end of summer season, I tore my ACL and needed surgery. The leg did not have stability and would give out even when I walked. I recall trying to put pressure into a shovel as I was digging in the garden, but my knee would give out. It was extremely frustrating having this physical limitation, not to mention the swelling, as things had to get done. Surgery was scheduled for December 20th that year. I had put my house on concession 8 up for sale by owner during this year and then listed with real estate. The house did not sell until 2007. When I did sell the house, I did not find one to purchase right away. In short term, I ended up renting for 2 months before purchasing and moving to a bungalow in town. I had made 3 moves in 3 short months, not to mention my daughter was married in July. It was a crazy, busy, and unsettling time. In 2005, I had purchased the same lot at the ski hill, which my son-in-law had asked me to view for an opinion. He didn't take my advice, but I fell in love with the site and ended up purchasing it. When I was renting that summer in 2007, a duplex property on the water in town came up for sale. This I purchased as an investment property with a closing in November. I now had 2 properties to close, with the bungalow in September. Hectic, but real estate was a passion for me. I had been a sales representative for 4 years during my mid to late 20s, but when on my own with a daughter to look after, I also needed the security of having a regular paycheck and decided that real estate was not the career for me at that time. When I moved into the bungalow in town, I started to think about building on or selling the lot. There was very little activity to sell except for the neighbor, which was no, I'll have to go back to this one. When I moved into the bungalow in town, I started to think about building on or selling the lot, and that was in Pakenham. There was very little activity to sell except for the neighbor, which was not willing to pay the asking price. So I decided to build the next year in 2008. When I had purchased the income property, I started to inquire about the vacant lot beside it. It was not for sale, but I had heard you could not build on it, so I thought I could acquire the lot cheaper than a building lot and add it to the existing rental property. After investigating and tracking down the owner, I found out that the lot was a building lot and she had fully intended to build a home on it. At this point, my head started spinning. Here was a vacant lot on the water just waiting to be built on. This was also the same street that I grew up on, familiar ground. It was a long process getting through the process of whether the lot could be built on. All the risk I took to inquire and investigate to satisfy the conditions was out of my pocket. The shoreline was protected by the Conservation Authority, and they were involved in expressing their concerns about changes to the waterfront. There were 3 major hurdles to deal with. The slope of stability line had been changed 2 years back, and the lot line setbacks and an environmental impact assessment report was required to support no disruptions to the endangered species of concern, the river red horse sucker. Although there was no support from the conservation and opposition from the town council, there was enough support, and I was given the go-ahead for the building of a house. I actually ended up building the house in Pakenham first, and as this process was started, the house on the water was not too far behind, thanks to inquiring about the SIP program at the local high school that were looking to build a house in the area. All requirements had fit in perfect and with my intent and their program. The next step was then going through the process of obtaining a building permit so the project could start in September of 2009. I actually received the building permit the day before construction was to begin, underestimating the long process. All this involvement in real estate was the foundation for my next phase in my life. I truly enjoyed the activity of building 2 homes, but not so much moving. The moving also helps me to remember occurrences which I can relate them to where I was at the time. And so ends chapter 1. Stay tuned for chapter 2 next week. Thanks, everyone.